Good morning. This meeting of the Land, Water, and Forest Resources Committee meeting is called to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Steve Karayanen,
Here.
Randy Newman,
Here.
Kay Wilson, Jim Evans.
Here.
Dale Magnuson. Allison John Jack. You have a quorum.
Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Certification of compliance with the open meetings law.
This meeting was noticed to the media and public as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
The meeting agenda is set. At this time, we'll open it up to public comments. Please adhere to the following when addressing the committee. Comments are limited to 3 minutes or less per individual. Comments should be directed to the committee as a whole and not directed to individual committee members. Committee cannot respond to your comments during this time. And please sign in and fill out a public comment sheet if you wish to speak. Do we have anybody signed up? I guess not. We'll move on to consideration of approval of minutes of the previous meeting. Anyone care to make a motion?
Make a motion to accept.
We have a second? I'll second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8, Kamba Kids Adventure Mountain Bike Camp, July 31st. Discussion and possible action.
I'll make a motion to approve the camp for July 31st.
Second.
Is there any further discussion around that? Hearing none, I guess we will, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Register of Deeds report, item 9. We all received a packet from Rachel Thompson, an update. She's not here today, but everything appears to be in order. I guess we can swiftly move on. Item 10, Land Records and County Surveyor Report. Land Information Office Report.
So, like every month here, we've got Kimberly and Chris's report. If you have any questions on those reports, you can ask me. I've got Tristan here. We were able to hire a real property lister. We had the position open since January when Rachel Thompson, who was in the position, took the Register of Deeds position. Tristan came in with knowledge on location information and has been able to become acclimated with the document system and the other computer systems that he needs to work with. So we're cruising. We're up and cruising with Tristan, pretty quickly here. So thumbs up.
Good to hear. Welcome aboard, Tristan. Real estate or real property lister report.
So as part of Kimberly's report here, she mentions that we had a meeting with the Novus Consortium. So the Novus software is what we use to both maintain the tax parcel database and display that information to the public and use it to generate tax bills. So it's kind of a cornerstone piece of software that a number of different departments use. It's always been 5 counties. You know, we've been using this software since 2006, and it's gone through a couple of different phases of ownership, but we kind of have, it's homegrown at this point where we're owning and maintaining it as a group of counties. Well, obviously there's other companies that create software like this, and there's a couple of counties in this Novus consortium that are considering leaving the Novus software package and moving on to a different software package. What this means to us is that the bill gets split so many ways, and well, I don't necessarily have any projected numbers, but the bill's looking to possibly be split less ways coming into the future. So it's something to think about. It's something that, I don't know, we're paying attention to it. I don't necessarily think that it's going to topple Novus. And if so, we do this, these other companies that do exist, we have been in discussion with them. So if there was ever an instability with Novus, going forward, we would know who to turn to fill in that gap. So a little expanded information on Novus.
Approximately what would be our annual cost today with the 5 counties? Any idea?
I can look that up if you give me a minute.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, moving on, county surveyor report. We have that in our packet. Nine certified survey maps were done in June. Okay. What's that?
He's already given me 9.
Oh, okay. All right. All right, let's move to item number 11, forestry, county forestry report. Mr. Peterson.
Okay. For month of June, we did have 13 sales listed as active. We're still seeing a fair amount of our spring, early summer sale activity. We should see a pickup here coming on July 15th when our oak wilt restrictions come off. We've got quite a few contractors lined up to start sales then too. Sale value sold and uncut on file is just under 5 million. Sale revenue for June, we're at 251,000. So our year to date, we did top 1 million right now. So we are on target for our revenue projection for the year right now. We did have a sale closed out and performance bond cashed for non-completion this month. Sale inspections are on track for the level of activity. No tracks were turned in for review. Foresters are concentrating mainly on field work at the moment and administering timber sales. Recon acres, we're on track there. We are on our next year for the Good Neighbor Authority contract. That's approximately 495 hours of sale establishment. And we did receive our reimbursement for our last year's contract of just over 30,000. Moving on, oak wilt, I mentioned that. Restrictions are coming off on the 15th. We're going to be coordinating with DNR for a little later in the summer and hopefully get a flight in to detect some potential pockets. Nothing new to report on bike trails or Berkey Trail. The ATV, UTV trails, we did have 5 trail rehab projects out for bid. That was due last week. We received acceptable bids on 4 out of the 5. I'll have the details in next month's packet for you, but looks pretty good. We got a few new contractors, a couple of old contractors in there, so the projects are getting spread around. Other than that, unless anybody has any questions, I don't have anything else to add.
Thank you very much, Greg. Any questions? Okay. Item B under forestry, direct timber sale approval of track 38-21 to Roger Hoyt at a minimum bid value of $36,105. Discussion and possible action.
So on this sale, this one's been kind of a bit of an anchor on us for a while. We've advertised this, I think, at least 5 times, and we haven't had bids on it. So according to our policy, the state policy is we can go to a direct sale if we advertise it once and we don't receive any bids. So we've been trying to do this one the normal way, but we had Mr. Hoyt was interested in a direct sale. He's purchased county timber sales in the past. So proposal is to sell to Roger Hoyt for the minimum sale values.
Okay. Any questions or comments about this committee?
I'll make a motion that we accept this direct sale to Mr. Roger Hoyt.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you much. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. C, Aurora Sustainable Easement Request. Discussion and possible action.
Yeah, good morning, committee members. My name is Matt Dahlman. I work for the Nature Conservancy based out of Tomahawk, Wisconsin, and thank you for getting this on your agenda. So I'm here in my role as a supporting role in the project, and our purpose, I'm joined here with Ron Gropp from the DNR, who leads the Working Forest Easement Program for the state, and then a representative from Aurora Sustainable Lands, Forrest Gibo, to answer questions. So really here to provide information about what the project is. This project lands in Sawyer County, about 18,000 acres of the project in this county. And really here to, again, just inform you about what's going on, answer any questions you have, and just let you know where we are in the process. So this is early in the stages. The map that you see on the screens here in red are the properties that are being proposed for a working forest conservation easement. And I'm going to pass that information or pass the discussion of that, what it is, and questions to Ron Gropp, who's the expert on that. And again, the Nature Conservancy's role, we're a nonprofit conservation group, really here to help facilitate the development of the application that'll be submitted to the Federal Forest Legacy Program in pursuit of federal dollars. And then any support that we can find from the state of Wisconsin through what could be the Knowles Nelson or private dollars that we want to bring to the project to make this happen. So that's what my role is. I'm going to pass it on to Ron to share a little bit of information about the easement program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Committee Chair, members of the committee, thank you for having me. Really happy to be here today to speak on behalf of this project. My name is Ron Gropp. I work for Wisconsin DNR Division of Forestry, and my role is to manage our conservation easement program, including the Federal Forest Legacy Program. And so, yeah, certainly willing to take questions from the committee members here about, generally speaking, what the conservation easement program is, what a conservation easement does, and things in those regards. Essentially, this is a landowner decision to protect their property. And the manner in which they decide to do that is through a conservation easement. And essentially, it's a mechanism that allows the landowner to protect their property from being sold and not necessarily sold, but subdivided and fragmented into smaller and smaller parcels. Essentially protects development from occurring on that property while keeping it in a forested condition. And that's obviously really important here in Wisconsin. We know that forestry is second only to the ag industry in terms of its monetary contribution to the state's economy. So it's a huge deal. And so what a working forest conservation does is it keeps these working forests working while at the same time, protecting that property from, fragmentation and parcelization and things in those regards. So with that, I'm just going to kind of take a pause and let folks, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I guess I've got a lot of questions around it. And I have to admit I was rather ignorant about the whole concept of working forest conservation easements prior to, getting an email from Mr. Dahlman. And I think it was June 16th, Matt sent me an email, and I was about to respond to it on the 17th when the phone rang, and it was Matt. So we had a conversation around this whole thing. And Matt kind of explained the concept. Again, he teed up the idea of a working forest conservation easement, which sounded like a no-brainer. To me, it sounded like almost like having county forest land where you've got a flow of timber products and recreational opportunities preserved forever. And who wouldn't be in favor of something like that? So that was my first impression. So, and maybe I wasn't hearing everything you said or whatever, but that's kind of my first blush at it. So, I had no qualms about including this for discussion, but since then, I've been looking a little more, trying to find out what this Forest Legacy Program was all about. And I was kind of shocked to see that we have already got two conservation easements of rather large size within Sawyer County. I think it's over 40,000 acres combined with the Chippewa Flowage and Lake of the Pines conservation easements. And here we're looking at adding another 18,000+ acres to that. And I guess the questions that I've got revolve around what has the benefit of those easements been to the citizens and taxpayers of the county to date? Has it done anything in terms of an economic benefit, say? I mean, certainly there's environmental benefits that you can point to, but I guess in my mind, forestry is a balance between economic, environmental, and social benefits. So, where you sit and find that balance, I guess, is a matter of debate. But in general, I tend to favor a more active approach to a working forest than some folks. So. And again, the fact that our forest products industry is the second largest sector in the state is something we need to not take away from. And so as I started, looking into what this is all about, I learned that ANU Sustainable Lands, was a player in this, and I'd never heard of Aurora Sustainable Lands, and found out some interesting information again that Aurora is also basically ANU, which bought Blue Source, which provides the certification for our county forest carbon credit program. So, and I see that Aurora is very heavily invested in carbon credits, even to a greater extent than active forest management, if you will. So I guess I have some concerns about one entity that seems so, in my view, passive when it comes to managing forests, just basically letting nature take its course and maybe doing some token harvesting perhaps, rather than managing, say, to the extent that a good working forest like the Sawyer County Forest does, I believe. May not support the forest industry that is so important to the whole state of Wisconsin and especially Sawyer County. So, I mean, those are just some of the questions and concerns I have, and I just would like to see what your thoughts are in response.
Sure, happy to. Well, let me just address the public benefit question that you asked. So I think you mentioned the Chippewa flowage easement and the Lake of the Pines conservation easement. And so one of the ways that you can think of these conservation easements as they stay in private ownership. Okay. The DNR doesn't own the land. We're not buying it fee title. We're just simply purchasing a conservation easement. So we would hold the conservation easement. So that means it stays in private ownership, stays on the tax rolls, and they have to continue to sustainably manage their timber resources according to an approved forest management plan by Chief State Forester, right? So we know those are just givens. A big public benefit here is access. Now, we know that these lands are enrolled in MFL and they are open to the public already, right? But they're open to foot traffic. And in the case of Chippewa flowage and Lake of the Pines, we negotiated motorized access on designated open access roads. As you know, a number of years ago, a lot of these gates were locked. Owned by when we acquired Chippewa, not to get too far off on into the weeds here, when we acquired Chippewa, we acquired an access easement separate from the conservation easement at the time. And I think we have roughly 8 miles of designated open access road on that particular property. So it's open to motorized traffic. With Lake of the Pines, I think we negotiated something like 16 miles of designated open access roads that are open to motorized vehicles. The other benefit here is that if for whatever reason a landowner decides to withdraw from MFL, and they can do that anytime, and there's no requirement that if there's an easement that it has to be an MFL, the easement stays in place and that access remains open. Okay. So a huge benefit. Now, we can debate the likelihood of withdrawing from the managed forest land in Wisconsin. But that's always a possibility out there for these landowners to withdraw if they don't want to be in it anymore. And then in this case, if they did so, the conservation easement would remain in place and all those public benefits that are identified in an easement stay in place, and it rides with the sale of the land as well. So that if they decide to sell that property, the next landowner understands that it comes with an easement and all those public benefits still remain in place. So I think there's a number of benefits from that standpoint, from the social aspect that you mentioned, certainly the economics related to timber harvesting remain in place. It's not like it's not like they're not going to harvest. They still have to remain in compliance as long as they're in the managed forest law program. They still have to maintain compliance with that program, which means sustainably harvesting and managing to an approved forest management plan. As to how much they harvest, that I think is really outside of our authority. We really don't have any authority to regulate how much they harvest, nor with any private landowner in the state of Wisconsin. However, participating in a forest carbon program, just generally speaking, because I'm not an expert in forest carbon programs by any stretch of the imagination, but what I do know is it's a balance between sustainable harvest of traditional wood products and how do I want to say, diversifying their revenue streams through forest carbon, right? So what that means is they're trying to find a balance between harvesting traditional forest products and generating revenue from sequestering carbon as well, and trying to find that balance. So in some cases, perhaps that does mean scaling back harvesting to some degree, but at the same time, wood products are continuing to be removed from that property in a sustainable manner. And that's really what we hang our hat on here is it sustainable? Is it compliant with program requirements? And is it compliant with the terms and conditions of the conservation easement?
Do you have any idea what plans Aurora might have for harvest, say on a per decade basis for the next 5 or 10 decades?
I do not at my fingertips, no.
Wouldn't they be required to have a plan of some sort in place?
They have a plan. Yep, they would be required to have a plan in place.
They have a plan in place?
Yep.
Okay. But you don't know what the outputs are, or,
Well, the plan typically doesn't identify an annual allowable harvest, for example. They don't-
just in looking at some different things that Aurora has said, my understanding is they have a goal of harvesting between 10 and 20% of annual growth.
Mhm.
To me, that seems, I guess one thing I question is that 10 or 20% of net annual growth or gross annual growth?
Well, let me step aside here. I'm going to let the representative of the landowner here speak to that. I think they have a pretty good idea of what their goals and their plans are, so.
Okay, thank you. Mhm.
Thank you for the opportunity today to speak to you about this opportunity. I'm Forrest Gibo. I'm the Senior Director of Portfolio Management at Aurora Sustainable Lands. Just to step back quick and just talk about Aurora. We are not a new affiliated back to Blue Source. We are our own entity. We are a timber investment, very similar to TIMO's. We have investors, a small pool of investors. Anew is a very small stake, less than 5% stake in our business. So we are completely separate from Anew. Anew is a carbon development group. We are separate. We are a timber. We are essentially a forest investment and sustainability company. So we are not one and the same. Just want to get that out there first. We are the 7th largest forest landowner in the U.S. as of present, and we focus on eastern hardwood forests. So we specialize in sustainably managing eastern hardwood forests. And if you can see in the map there, all the other conservation easements that are in brown, we currently own. So we already own those assets, and they're being managed as we speak. Actually, activity around the lake states. Actually, some of our most robust forest management activity is happening right here in Sawyer County. So we have timber sales that are currently being set up on these conservation easements that are adjacent. And we are currently penning over $400,000 of timber sales on some of our assets in Sawyer County. So a very large aspen harvest and red pine harvest are being contracted within the next few days. And if we look across the lake states, we own land in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Sawyer County is where we have our most activity in traditional forest products. So just want to point that out, that we are very much dedicated to traditional forest products, and that's part of our business model. It's not just forest carbon. Forest carbon is another forest product. And as we manage our lands for our investors, we're always looking to optimize the best markets, just like anyone else would be looking at optimizing the pulp market, saw timber markets, export markets. We're looking at all of those markets. And as a present, the carbon markets aren't performing as great as we would like them. So what are we doing? We're cutting timber. And the forest carbon markets do not restrict us from doing that. And if you think about, I can't speak specifically to, the next 10 years of how much timber is going to come off these properties. We are, every year we step back, we look at markets, we adjust our plans. But if you look at the TIMOs in the lake states and you reference 20% of net growth, in a lot of cases, that's probably in the ballpark of the past 30, 40 years of where harvests truly were. It's really hard to cut. 100% of growth. It's really hard. And I'd argue now with the current demands that are out there, in the supply chain and the consumption in the lake states, I don't think we can do that without selling at prices that would be potentially at a loss. So forest carbon is a great diversification tool in our portfolio for us to manage our lands sustainably long term. So I just wanted to help you guys understand the fact that, these are actively multi-use forests. We are committed to, managing these forests in ways that they will recruit, develop, and be providing benefits into the future.
Okay, thank you. As far as the Forest Legacy Program, just flipping through it, I see there's a state forest stewardship coordinating committee that's a part of this whole process and kind of guides the development of it. Here to enlighten us on that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So state forest stewardship coordinating committees are, that's what's sort of identified in the authorizing legislation, congressional legislation that establishes both the forest stewardship and the Federal Forest Legacy Program. And Wisconsin is a participant in both of those programs. And so as a result, we receive federal funds to deliver those particular programs to the citizens of the state of Wisconsin. Part of the requirement in exchange for receiving those federal funds is that we have to establish what's called the State Stewardship Coordinating Committees. In Wisconsin, we have what's called the Wisconsin Private Forestry Advisory Committee. That's what we call it. WPFAC is the acronym for short. And the role of WPFAC is essentially to advise the state forester on all issues related to the program implementation and delivery of our cooperative private forestry assistance programs. So they serve an advisory role in terms of, specifically in terms of forest legacy. We have to engage them in terms of evaluating and assessing those projects. And then they make a recommendation to the chief state forester about whether or not they should be moved forward for national consideration, right? So they have a role with ranking, scoring, and evaluating any forest legacy application that comes in from a landowner. And I do want to stress that this is really a landowner decision to protect their property, and the legacy program just happens to offer up a financial assistance program that allows them to do that. And so that's the role of WPFAC in this regard. WPFAC is comprised of landowners, both large and small, industrial as well, academia from UW Extension and University of Wisconsin, federal partners from the NRCS, Forest Service, and Farm Services Agency, along with state officials as well. We also have representation from local land and water conservation districts. So it's a relatively robust committee. The membership is outlined and identified in the congressional legislation, and we try to adhere to that as best we can. Sometimes we don't have folks who want to participate or decline to participate, and so there's not much we can do there, but we try to have a fairly robust committee put together. On average, the committee meets twice a year. We strive for twice a year if we have appropriate content to bring to that committee.
Now, in terms of this request, and the application or the submission for federal application is due in October, I see. It says that the DNR is requesting the landowner share their intentions with local government, which you're doing today. And you're looking for support from this committee for the state of Wisconsin to apply for federal funding through the Legacy Program to place a working forest conservation easement on Aurora Sustainable Lands property. And then following that, if the application is selected for funding, the department will be seeking a resolution passed by the full county board. So in other words, the DNR is going to request that the county board pass a resolution in order to use Knowles Nelson stewardship funding to match federal funds. And this request will come in the winter months of 2025-26. Now, in terms of the Forest Legacy Program funding, do you have any idea of the amount of that? What the dollar amount?
Right now, what we're doing, so let me just back you up here a little bit and talk a little bit more about Legacy and what that does. So the Federal Forest Legacy Program provides up to 75%, covers up to 75% for the cost of the acquisition of a conservation easement, right? And then the land, and then there's a 25% match. So between the landowner, partners, the state, for example, we have to come up with a 25% match. And that match can be in the form of cash, in-kind contributions, with previous acquisitions such as Chippewa Flowage and Lake of the Pines here in Sawyer County. We used Knowles Nelson stewardship money as a match. And also as an outright purchase of the Lake of the Pines conservation easement. We didn't use federal funding for that acquisition at all. It was all Knowles Nelson stewardship money. So we have that ability. But yes, so there's a 25% match, and that match can come in various forms. Right now, one of the criteria for the application itself for federal funds, it's what's called a market analysis, right? And so it's not an appraisal. We're not going to pay for an appraisal because it's not even a project yet that's gone through any sort of ranking process, and we don't even know if it's going to get funded. So, but in order for us to request federal funds, they've asked us to, put together, well, what's your best guess? How much are you going to need, you think? And the manner in which we do that is through a market analysis. And so our real estate shop in DNR does that. They kind of pull together this information, they compile it based on, previous comps, for example, previous acquisitions like CHIP, Lake of the Pines, our most recent one, Pelican River. And they kind of look at that and they say, well, here's kind of what we think we're going to need. So right now, I don't have a good sense for how much we would request for this. I mean, we're talking about 18,000, 16? 18,000 acres. I would imagine that's going to be an ask of at least 6 million, maybe, maybe a little more. I don't know, without having first, having a good idea of what our market analysis says. That right now is in the process of being compiled. I expect to have that available by the end of this month prior to going to our WIPFAC committee later this month to engage them on this particular project.
We'd be looking for roughly $6 million of federal funding.
Well, that's my best guess at this point without having seen,
Which would imply another 2 million of other funding at least to meet the 25% from other sources.
I guess if those are the numbers, based on the 75-25% split. But it could be less, it could be more in terms of what our ask is. I just don't know right now.
Okay.
So what would you do with that funding then when you get it?
So that funding comes to us in a grant from the Forest Service. And then at the time we close on the easement, that funding then goes to the landowner. So here's how an easement works. So essentially what a landowner is doing is they're selling a certain number of rights to us, right? And those rights have value. And what they're selling essentially is their development rights. And so that's what is appraised, is the development rights that they're giving up to us. So so that funding, that money then would then go to the landowner. And in an exchange, we would hold the easement in perpetuity and ensure that that land stays in a working forest condition. And then all of the public benefits that are derived from that privately owned land continue to be available to the public.
You do any trail construction or anything like that for the public in them lands, or you do any road maintenance or?
Typically, the road maintenance is the responsibility of the landowner. And what we've done with past acquisitions, primarily with Lake of the Pines, is we've required as a requirement of the easement that they establish a road maintenance endowment fund, so that they have money specifically for the purpose of maintaining those roads over time. Because they understand, the public's using their roads, they're creating issues and, damage to those roads. And the roads, quite honestly, are an asset, an investment that the landowner makes to support commercial forest management purposes, right?
Oh. Then them roads be available for ATVs and stuff then, or no?
That's something that we would have to sit down and negotiate with the landowner. Yep. In some cases, for example, with our most recent acquisition over in Oneida County, Pelican River, we negotiated ATV access on that property. In addition to 70 miles of road that are now open to the public for motorized access.
These lands here in red here, I'm real familiar with all that land. That was all owned by Consolidated Papers, and they managed it for 50 years.
Yep. Until
they had financial trouble. And they manage it really well as forestry land, all these lands here.
Yep.
Extremely well. And the trouble is, when they went into financial trouble, they had to sell it to other entities, and they kind of went in and just cut everything down. And I don't know, they did get basically what I seen is they seen how much money they could make in that first quarter, and not a lot were Consolidated looked at long-term management of the forests. That was their philosophy. But when these other companies got in there, they're just looking at how much money can we make this quarter? What can we cut down and make money faster to make their portfolio look better? So, I wish it would get back to the way Consolidated operated it back in the day. That would be nice.
Yeah. I think, and just a quick comment on that. I think what we've seen over the last, since about 1999, I believe, we've seen a steady decline in the number of acres owned by large private industrial companies. And we use enrollment in MFL large account as sort of a proxy to give us an idea about what that looks like, right? So back in 1999, I think there was roughly 1.2 million acres of private industrial land in the program. Currently, it's about 660,000 acres. So it's declined significantly over the last, 20 or so years. And, that's a concern to us, because those are productive forest lands that we want to keep in some form of production. So that's a concern to us. So this again, another benefit of the easement is that that's what it does. It keeps it in a working forest condition. Now, I think the days of, industry owned land are probably over. And I think it was a business decision more than anything else in terms of, because they have ample supply of wood coming from private lands, right? In fact, the majority of the owned land in Wisconsin is owned by family forest landowners. I mean, about 64% of the land in Wisconsin is family forest landowners. It's not the state, it's not the feds, it's not county, it's private landowners. And so the majority of the raw materials that are supplying our wood products industry come from private lands. And so these large industrial lands, privately owned lands, are hugely important in that regard.
So a question with that. So now we're gonna give them 8 million and they still get all the carbon credit money and their forestry money while doing this, correct?
Well, again, the numbers are just hypothetical at this point, but yeah, I mean, again, the rights that they're selling to protect that property from being subdivided and sold into smaller and smaller parcels have value. So, yep, they would. Now, you have to understand, I don't know what they bought the property for. But what they would get in return is what would not pay for what they bought it for. From that standpoint, if that makes any sense.
If this property gets put into a conservation easement, would the future land use plan have to be changed in the comprehensive plan of the towns?
I don't believe so. In fact, I haven't read your comprehensive land use plan, but I believe the conservation easement would be in alignment with the saving and conserving and protecting large tracts of forest land, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. I worked on the Draper Comprehensive Plan, and our number one priority was to maintain the Northwoods character of the town and contiguous forest tracts, not parceling anything under 40s. We were trying to have one nominal structure per 40. My question is gravel. That's where the gravel is, and we have a gravel shortage. Is this easement going to interfere with the ability to crush gravel if the landowner agrees to still let us do it? Because they were very cooperative with us to allow us to get gravel in the last 2 years. Is this easement going to impede other uses of the property in any way? If they decide to sell us gravel, is that still okay?
I think it's something that we can negotiate. Certainly, we've made accommodation for that with other landowners, other easements we've acquired. For example, we've allowed, on some of these large ones, up to 5 gravel sites not to exceed a certain amount of acres, for example. Certainly there to support their commercial forest management activities. I think we'd have to talk about, well, if it would be sold to a town or a local unit of government, that might be something we'd have to talk about with our federal partners to see if that was allowed. But I think it's a talking point we can certainly negotiate.
The Headwater Rivers Working Forest one-pager that we were forwarded includes a couple of statements that I'm trying to square up. One statement is easement will ensure that the lands remain publicly accessible working forests, contributing to Wisconsin forest products industry and recreation industries forever. But then another statement here says, the property which while enrolled in the MFL ensures sound forest management and recreational uses, but does not ensure this use and access forever. Can you explain why the different tone of these statements appears on the same page here?
Well, do you want to address that, Matt?
Unless you get a response, but I can't.
I mean, MFL is not, a landowner can withdraw from MFL at any time. And so if they withdraw, then there's no public access.
So this is forever, but
No, with an easement, public access is forever.
So the question I had and while we were talking about this is, so that yes, the conservation easement grants access forever for everybody, but my question is, would management be required through the conservation easement or only through the MFL enrollment?
Oh, if they withdraw from MFL, they still have to have an approved forest management plan and they still have to manage according to that plan in a sustainable manner. So
Right.
whether it's an MFL or not, there's still a forest management plan requirement.
Okay, that was my clarifying question, which
Absolutely.
I didn't understand why they would unenroll, but
Yep. Nope, that's definitely a forest legacy program requirement. And I think it's worth mentioning that, you know, when we talk about the easement, a conservation easement and an MFL, they're two different things. They're totally separate. Completely separate things. The conservation easement protects the property forever. And it provides public benefits forever. MFL, it's about timber production, but a landowner can decide to withdraw from that program at any time. And then all those benefits go away.
Okay, I thank you very much. Any other questions, committee?
The last thing that I would leave the committee with is, you know, part of the reason why we're here is, you know, this is part of the, my department's expectation to be more proactive with engaging local units of government. Because we realize this is important. And so just having this conversation, I just want to, you know, express my sincerest thanks, for having us to talk about it and to address these questions that you have. I think they're extremely important. And your support in this project going forward is going to be extremely important as well, particularly as you know, if and when we get to that point and we, you know, we're seeking funds to meet the 25% match. And I just want to address that, Steve, real quick, because I know you mentioned that. So there is legislation in place that basically says anything north of Highway 8, if we, the DNR, want to use stewardship monies, Nelson Stew money for fee title acquisition or easement acquisition, we have to engage the local units of government and seek supporting resolutions that allow us to do that. And so another reason why we're here, one, to be proactive and be transparent with you all about what this landowner's intentions are. Bring additional understanding and clarity about what a conservation easement is. And then, yes, seek your support in helping us move this forward. You know, I know when this project, and I expect this project will be ranked high by our Private Forestry Advisory Committee. Our state forester will likely accept that recommendation, and then we'll put it forward for national consideration. So this is a national panel that ranks legacy projects from across the United States, right? So we're going to be competing with projects from all over the place here in the US, and it's competitive. There's no guarantees that we'll be successful in getting the funding. But if we do, you know, your support goes a long way with informing that ranking panel that this project has local support. So it's really important. So I just want to leave you with that. And thank you. Thank you all.
Well, thank you. I'm still left a little bit concerned about the fact that that Aurora's goal of harvesting 10 to 20% of net growth, if I heard right, across their lands is, to me, that just sounds like a very passive form of management, and it doesn't, again, support the important timber industry we have in the state. So, and the fact that this is forever.
Well, the easement would be forever, but the land can change hands.
Well, I mean, when you think of all the changes we've had in the past half a century or a century, I mean, we can't imagine what life's going to be like 50 or 100 years into the future. So, I just have a hard time doing anything forever.
Steve? Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Can I just want to ask a couple quick
Sure.
questions. I guess I'm just trying, so this is the first step in this process, and at a later date, there's, if you get through the steps, then there's an actual resolution that the county board would approve. So this isn't said and done today. So that,
Well, no, I don't think it's set in stone today. You're right. Yeah. Again, at the end of the day, this is a landowner decision.
right. So there will be another opportunity for discussion when the actual resolution comes through.
Yeah.
The other question I had is there, we went through this with the Lake of the Pines easement, and the board was very supportive of that. But is there a point in time, you're talking about negotiating with the landowners, is there a point in time where we could talk about, access issues, or snowmobile trails, ATV trails that we could,
Absolutely.
that's the one thing, going back, is like, I wish we would have been a little bit more forward thinking on the Lake of the Pines easement, and we have access now, but there's a couple things that we were hoping we could, it would have been better to get ahead of it, so is there a time that we could have some requests for, because we do have a snowmobile trail that goes through the Lake of the Pines easement, and, we have an agreement and everything works fine, but, there's other blocks that we might be looking at things like that, or access, for the county forest too. So I'm just wondering if there's a point where we could, negotiate some of that stuff before, the formal easement would be in place.
Oh, I believe so. Yeah. Typically, the timing for closing these deals is, it can take some time.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think there's going to be opportunity to sit down with the county and talk about those kind of things in conjunction with the landowner. Certainly those are, got to be mutually agreed upon between, the landowner and the interested parties. So, yeah, but I think there's opportunities there. Yeah.
Speak to that quick.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we are very open to working with all the stakeholders with regards to access. That's an important part for us, is that multi-use and the ability for these long-term management to look at making sure we've got improved roads to allow for forest management, but then also we completely understand that a big value here for the local community, the county, is the long-term access. And of course, there's costs associated with that, and that'll be things that we'll have to work through with the final valuation. Just to speak a little bit to, these existing roads that we're maintaining. Aurora is one of the largest landowners in the U.S. enrolled in FSC, Forest Stewardship Council. And there are high standards with regards to maintaining roads. Some of these properties were audited last year. We got good marks, but the reality is we are voluntarily putting ourselves to a higher standard by enrolling in FSC. And FSC is requiring us to maintain roads likely above the standard by which the conservation easement would hold us to. So that's something that FSC is stepping up across the country on all landowners, and there's a new standard that's out. And we've noticed that it's very important that if we've committed that we've got roads that are open for public access, that those roads are in condition by which that access and right can be exercised. And it's not, barely to the standard, that it's maintained well into that standard long term. So that's something that is just, I think, an added benefit with regards to, the stewardship that we're bringing to the table, is that we're stepping up to standards above and beyond, and that extends to roads and access.
okay, thank you. Committee, what you say?
Well, I think we're still just in the infancy stage here. So like I said, Greg and forestry and some of these other committees need to sit down and talk with these guys before I recommend any action.
So wait for more information and get a chance to chew on this a bit more before we jump right now.
Most definitely on my Yeah, I move to table it.
We have a second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. To be continued, folks. So thank you, Ron, Matt, Forrest. Item D, Wisconsin DNR report.
Yeah, so not too much to report. Fiscal year's rolled over, so jumped in, getting sales prepped, working on some new stuff. Then like Greg mentioned, oak wilt restrictions are coming off in next week or so. So harvest activity will be picking up after that, as well as, keep an eye on your oak trees. If anything starts suddenly dying, wilting, dropping leaves, that's likely oak wilt. So it'll be kind of time when that's pretty visible. That's about all we have to report right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Item E, U.S. Forest Service report. Anybody here today? Nope. F, recreational trails report, motorized.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Like Greg said earlier, oak wilt restrictions come off next week, so the mowing and brushing will begin on our trail system. Trails and routes are going well. We've got a lot of new routes opened up in the county last year with the county roads being open. And the only concerns we're having right now is on our maps, but we are working on that. Every year we put out a new map, so we're doing research in that right now. The other concerns is the confusion that we're having driving in the county within the reservation, because the signage is a little confusing, and it's confusing to our visitors that come and they can drive on a county road, but they can't drive on certain county roads in certain areas. It's confusing, and we're trying to work that out. I think it's going to be a long process, but we did have some trails or routes taken away from us in the reservation in the last couple of years, and we're trying to get those put back on. New trail update. We've been working on trying to get a trail from the north to the south to get people, visitors, to go on both sides of Highway 77. We've secured some property thanks to property owner Jeff Greschel and property owner Daryl Most. We are going from Pitt Road on Trail 77 south to Twin Lakes Road through their property. That will be the major connector for our trail system. The only other two are, the one trail is in the city of Hayward, where we take Trail 31 north on Chippewa Trail, and the other access is seasonal, and that's over in Moose Lake. So this is a big addition to our trail system. We started our new year as of July 1 fiscal year, and we've got a lot of projects for maintenance issues and a lot more coming, and it should be a good year for that. Any questions?
Any questions, committee? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Anything on non-motorized this morning? Moving on, agenda item 12, zoning conservation department, conservation report.
As part of the conservation report, our AIS coordinator Natalie Earlers received additional plant training for aquatic plants at a DNR workshop, and then used that knowledge and did kind of a training seminar to the Spider Lake chain, Lost Land Lake, Teal Lake, and Ghost Lake to train those volunteers about aquatic plant identification. They also did water sampling and boat landing monitors. With the recent rain events over the last couple of weeks, our water levels throughout the county have started to come back up quite a bit. I do believe as of right now, the Billy Boy Dam is fully open because we are above max elevation. Hopefully we'll get right below that max elevation and start closing up some gates, because we did have some reports that the velocity between Big Le Coudray and Little Le Coudray is pretty fast right now, which makes navigation a little bit difficult. But we got to get the water moving downstream and out of the system, and then we can close those gates up, which actually brings that headwater back that slows that velocity down. Nelson Lake is still a little bit down. We did end up finally getting the last board in there. So we, as of July 1st, it was still approximately 6 inches down. I know we did have some rain there before the 4th. So hopefully that 6 inches is more like 4 to 3 inches. I'd have to speak with Tim Seidel to see exactly where that level is at, but the water level is still coming up and we are still holding back the max amount of water that we can to get that back to full pool. Price Dam update. We do have a motor on the gate for the Price Dam that is non-operational. This clutch mechanism within this gate has given us some issues in the past and is now giving us issues again. So we are looking and trying to seek out bids from certain companies that can potentially do some of this work. These are not cheap repairs. This is a very specialized type of operation that needs to be done on this. Luckily, these repairs and any costs associated with would be a 50-50 split with the town of Winter. And the Land Water Management Plan Advisory Committee has conducted their second meeting. As part of these plan updates, we are continuing to going through those updates to the plan. There's additional meetings for later this month. These plans will eventually undergo an official public hearing process prior to any adoptions. I do have several other presentations, so I will leave my report at that.
Thank you much. USDA report. Nothing today? Okay. Nelson Lake, Town of Leonard Boat Landing, discussion and possible action.
Hello, my name is Brett Danielson. I'm one of the supervisors of the town of Leonard. And I talked to Ron Kinsley, and he's the one that said I need to get approval because the Ettlinger's boat landing, I don't know if you got that picture of the boat landing or the lake there. The boat landing is on the far end of the lake. And then to show a little history, I marked it in yellow, and that was one of the first boat landings on Nelson Lake. And it's been there before the lake was even a lake. It was a river then. And then they dammed it off, and then I guess they used to farm in there and stuff like that too. So, but that landing was there. And just to show you a little bit more, the yellow also is, there's two islands there. The one is Stacy Island. The other one is Partners Island. Those are named after me and my daughter. I mean, my sister, Stacy's. So that tells you a little bit more history of the lake. And it's Stacy Island, and Partners Island is me, my brother, and my grandfather used to be partners in trapping to get our money for our hunting trips way back in the 60s and 70s and stuff like that. So, but anyways, I'm here and there's another picture that shows it has finished grade of the road. And that's the top picture. That's what I want it to look like. And the bottom part is it's a side view of the hump that's in there right now. And the hump is what we want to take out of there, or I do. I mean, it's terrible to try to land a boat there right now. You have to have 4-wheel drive. And the people that have like duck boats and stuff like that can't even get in there, with those little boats without having 4-wheel drive. And it needs to be fixed up. And back when I worked for the highway department, we fixed up a few different boat landings around the county. And like one of them was, for example, Spring Lake off of E there. And we did everything. We blacktopped it, the whole works, for that. This one here, I'm just asking to get the permit. The only permit we need is the one from zoning, because we're not going to go below the high water mark. We're not going to dig below that. We just want to dig it so it's kind of flush with the high water mark, a little bit higher, and then put some pit run in there. And the town of Leonard has pit run at the shop. And then we also have gravel. And I just want to get it so that it's compacted down, and that way it's nice and smooth all the way through there, so we can get that usable for even a car to land a boat there, which, I've been using it for over 50 some years myself. So, and it's just, now it's getting to be a pain, trying to get in and out of there without 4-wheel drive, or it needs a little work. And the Nelson Lake property owners ended up putting a beach in there. So there's a little beach that was, a couple of years ago, they put the beach sand, they got that all okayed but we don't have a dock there, nothing. So I put in to ask Scope if they could help with the dock and we put a L-shaped dock there so the kids can cast off of it. So that's in the works. If we can get this landing fixed up and approval from the county to have the work done there on the county land, and then we also had to have a vote on it through I was on the agenda for the June 9th. And then Supervisor Jack Schustrom, he made a motion to approve the boat landing itself within DNR guidance. And Supervisor Jason Schustrom seconded the motion, so four in favor and 1 opposed, and the motion passed. So that's passed through there. So now we just need the county board to approve that. And I also talked with the commissioner and the superintendent and trying to get the use of their machine, the excavator and an operator to do the work. And then we'll supply the pit run and the gravel and the dump truck and all that stuff. So and then we'll maintain it. But we just got to get that done, and then hopefully Scope can do with the landing or with the dock and the kids' dock, so we could get that usable again. I mean, that's I've been trying to see that done for years, and I guess that now I have a chance to, and now I'm going to try to do it. So if we can, I would like to have that done approved by you guys, and then we could go through the motions with whatever I have to do to get the excavator there too. So
You've run this through Public Works, was it?
no, the highway department.
Highway Department, okay.
I ran it through Ron Kinsley at first, and then I ran it through Jake. Yeah.
Kozlowski.
Yeah, and he told me that I don't need a DNR permit as long as I don't go below the high water mark. And they're gonna give us a permit for that. And so I'm just wait for the approval and to have this, we can get started on it, and then I can go through the other motions of trying to get Scope to help approve their dock and all that stuff. And then I guess just to start doing it when we can. So I guess that's all I have to say.
Yeah, so ultimately, it's a request for being issued a permit, and it'd be as a shoreline alteration permit, which is on county-owned lands. It's ultimately part of the Sawyer County Forest Crop, so we'd be looking for a letter of concurrence from the Forestry Department, and then as part of a motion for approval from this committee. I do not believe it needs to go to county board. If the chair believes that it should, we can certainly do that, but ultimately it's for either the chair, county administrator, or myself to sign off on the restoration permit because it is on county-owned lands, letter of concurrence with Sawyer County Forest, but then no additional financial contribution would be needed by the county.
But there would be a cost, some cost from the county in terms of their equipment, man and equipment helping on the project?
Yeah, for about a half a day.
Potentially, yeah, from the county highway department.
Be minimal.
Right.
Yep. That'd be the maximum from the county.
Is forestry good with it, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, as long as the appropriate permits are obtained, we have a working agreement with Town of Lenroot on a couple of the Wayside Park and this boat landing in the beach area too. So if Town of Lenroot's on board with it and just repairing it, I'm in favor.
I guess I'd like to make a motion to allow the permit to have the launch redone on the county property.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. All right, Whitefish Lake Property Owners Association presentation.
Good morning, committee. My name is Pat Weir. I'm on the Whitefish Lake Property Owners Association Board. What I'm here to talk to you, basically educate you about, is a problem that we've had for the last 4 summers. In May of 2021, the DNR went back to a order from 1955 and for the lake level for the whole chain. So Whitefish flows into Lac-Courte, Grindstone flows into Lac-Courte, Big Lac-Courte flows into Little Lac-Courte, down the Billy Boy flowage, then to the Billy Boy Dam. Going back to that order, what it basically did was lowered our lake level by a foot. That's really caused hardships that I want to go into. Let me just read a couple of quotes here. This is from Dale Olson. He said, "I was directly involved in the operation of the Billy Boy Dam to set and maintain water levels upstream in Little Lac-Courte and Big Lac-Courte during those 24 years. We maintained the water level on the gauge located at the bridge between Big and Little Lac-Courte at a minimum of 1.05 feet and a maximum level of 1.63 feet. That gauge has been in existence since 1968. Jay has a quote here, Jay Kozlowski, in an email. As part of the 1955 order, it was found that the official water level elevation was to be taken at the old George Hess Resort, which is on the main body of LCO. That's not there anymore. A new gauge was installed at the Thoroughfare Bridge last year, so that would have been 2021, which we now calculate the elevation, it drops the entire system over 1 feet in elevation. So again, that's kind of the facts of what we're experiencing. Let me just talk a little bit about how this 1 foot lower in elevation has affected us this is the 4th summer, so the last 3 years. Access. So as you can imagine, many of us, if you look at the 3 lakes, it's got to be 300, 400, 500 people are affected with low water level by a foot like that. And it's difficult in late July, August, September to get our boats on and off our boat lifts. And then in September, October, when we call to get boat people to come out and take our boats or take our docks and lifts out, as you know, a lot of them are now coming with ramps with forks. They can't get in, so they decline. It's too shallow for them to get in with their motor and their boats. Expense. Sand Lake Township has now had to repair their boat ramp twice due to low water levels and power loading, which created a critical safety risk to a person and property since the water level changes. Now it has become a financial issue for both the township and shore owners. Returning water to previous managed levels will allow tax-paying shore owners to use their boats. The petition, which is, we made a petition, Whitefish Lake talked with the Wisconsin DNR, and protocol was to submit a petition to return the lake levels to a range Sawyer County was managing without a gauge and prior to a new gauge location change and new enforcement of the outdated PCS orders. PCS orders were going back to 1955. Whitefish is not asking for elevated levels, but rather a return to the levels that we are accustomed to for 50, 60, 70 years prior to 2021. You know, something to consider is previously LCO had higher water levels and there were fewer complaints of the high water. I wonder if wake and surf boats are part of that problem. Just something to consider. Ecology. In terms of ecology, there are numerous scientific papers stating that low Lake water levels also cause erosion, just like excessively high lake water levels cause erosion. Erosion is a natural process that occurs under all water level conditions. This occurs by undermining of the shorelines and collapsing grounds and trees. This is precisely what's happening on Whitefish Lake right now. Water quality. A return of the former level will improve critical wetlands. As you know, wetlands are critical filters for water quality. All three lakes have outstanding resources. Fisheries. Low lake water levels also lower the dissolved oxygen concentration levels during winter months, which in itself is already low due to decreased photosynthesis. Intense temperatures and increased sunlight due to low lake water levels deplete dissolved oxygen levels. This is a negative effect for Cisco and whitefish fisheries. As you know, whitefish is 105 feet deep, Lakuta Ray 90 feet deep, so they have these Ciscos and whitefish. Did you know that whitefish has a sustainable whitefish fishery? In 2015, only 9 Wisconsin lakes had whitefish. Biologist Max Walter from the DNR says now it's down to 7 in the entire state. AIS, aquatic invasive species, which on the board I work on for our lake. A return of previously managed lake water levels should also decrease the milfoil, sun exposure, and subsequent EWM growth. All 3 lakes struggle with EWM, but Lakuta Ray the greatest. What I want to just kind of close with is, so if you look at this from lake owners' perspectives on the 3 lakes, not just whitefish. So you've got one person from the Lakuta Ray area who came to the DNR and said, hey, I found this 1955 order. We've got to lower the lake level. So the DNR in May 18th, 2021 went ahead and just lowered the lake level by a foot. There was no due process. There were no public meetings to discuss with lake owners how that's going to affect us. It just seems wrong. We know that we do have riparian rights. And we've been told that, if you've got a lake level for 20 years, that could be precedent. So we're going to look into that as well. But there are hundreds of lake owners on the 3 lakes that are quite angry about this. I mean, if you think about it, for 3 straight summers, and maybe this will be the 4th, I don't know. I was just at the Billy Boy Dam yesterday. It's gushing over. I mean, it's a good foot that's coming over right now. And I would hope you guys would hold some of that back. I mean, last spring, we had heavy rains in May. But then we had such a drought, June, July, August, September, and we really had issues on whitefish. I'm sure it was on all 3 lakes, but it would have been great if Billy Boy Dam could have held back some of that water for us. So I really hope you guys can raise the gates there. I guess that's all I have to say. It's more of an education for you as to the dilemma we're going through. And we're going to try to get the lake level restored to what it was for 50, 60, 70 years.
Thanks for sharing that. Any questions, committee? Thanks again.
Thank you.
Jim has his hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question for anybody that might know. Has the DNR announced when they're going to have their public meeting regarding lake levels? I think that seems to be on everybody's mind as well.
Yeah, I just emailed with Jake Druffner this morning, and he had not indicated a potential date and time of that official public hearing yet, no.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Item E, groundwater mapping presentation by Amy Ursma from Wisconsin Geological and Natural History Survey.
Right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Wiersma. I'm from the Wisconsin Geological and Natural History Survey. I'm a hydrogeologist there. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time on the agenda this morning. I'm going to just try to step through a proposed groundwater mapping project for Sawyer County. If you all aren't familiar with the State Geologic Survey, we're housed within UW-Madison's Division of Extension. And really our mission there is to provide objective scientific information about Wisconsin's geology, mineral resources, and water resources. And with the water resources, we're primarily focused on groundwater, which is what my focus is there. So this is what I'll be covering today. I'm going to give a little bit of background about what county groundwater mapping that we do typically looks like. And I'll then talk about the proposed groundwater mapping for Sawyer County using Burnett County maps as an example, since we just completed mapping there in December. And then I'll go over the proposed timeline and budget for this project. So up here, I have some of the overarching baseline questions that these maps can answer. I'm just going to highlight a few of them right now. So some of the big ones are, what are our groundwater levels? What direction is groundwater moving? Those can be answered using a water table map, which I'll show you. And the other big question is, where is groundwater most vulnerable to contamination, to the activities that we do on the landscape? And that can be answered by a groundwater susceptibility map, which I'll show an example of. Like I said, I'm going to be using Burnett County as an example because we just completed this type of project for Burnett County. The reason Burnett County reached out to us is that there were some questions there about groundwater quality. There was a proposed concentrated animal feeding operation in the county. And so they wanted a way to have a better idea of their groundwater resources and sort of have that baseline information about their groundwater. And in particular, the susceptibility map was going to be really important for answering their questions. Okay, so why care about groundwater in Sawyer County? Well, the first good reason is that it provides 100% of drinking water to residents in Sawyer County. So if you can look at that diagram up there, those are Wisconsin's major aquifers. Most wells in Sawyer County are tapping into that sand and gravel aquifer on top, or the surficial aquifer, it's also called. The second reason why we should care about groundwater in Sawyer County and in general is that groundwater and surface water are connected, right? So if we have good groundwater quality, then we can help with the quality of our lakes and streams that we all love so much in this part of the state because they are connected. So why map the groundwater in Sawyer County? Well, the first reason is that it's going to provide that baseline information so that we can better protect the resource, not only to ensure that there's safe drinking water for the residents in Sawyer County, but also to support the economic endeavors in Sawyer County, the forestry, recreation, and tourism that thrive here and make it a place that people want to live and visit. The second reason is that it's both a timely and cost-effective opportunity because of a few reasons. The first is that we already have partial funding in place to map the surficial geology of Sawyer County, which is really exciting, and I'll share a little bit about that. And we also have an existing collaboration with staff from the Lakota Ray Band to start mapping the water table on the reservation, and I'll mention that later too. So these are the typical components of a groundwater mapping project. On the top there is the main source for a lot of the maps that are listed, the Well Construction Report database. And I'll talk more about that on the next slide. But if you go to the next slide, I've starred the maps that all feed into making the final map on the bottom, which is the groundwater susceptibility map. And if you go to the next slide, I think it's more helpful to view this visually. So you can see those four components all are what are used to make that susceptibility map. These are all natural factors. So the depth to the water table, surficial sediment type, groundwater recharge, and depth to bedrock. So really with the susceptibility, you can think of it as like the natural susceptibility of the groundwater. We're not considering any contaminant sources when we make this map. And I think that'll be more clear as we step through these different maps. I just wanted to give you an idea of where we're going. So we'll end with the susceptibility map. And I'm just going to step through and explain why each of these maps could be useful. But before I do that, let's talk a little bit about that well construction report database. So this is the first thing that we do with any mapping project is try to verify the location of wells across the study area. And this is because in order to make good maps, we need to have good data. The well points need to be associated with the correct position on the landscape. And so you can see on that map there's about 700 wells that are blue, which means that the locations have already been verified. But that leaves about 11,000 or so where the locations are unverified, and we'd be looking to try to get a more accurate location for those. We would probably aim to geolocate about 2/3 of the wells in the county and just make sure there's a good distribution of wells to make the maps. What's really exciting is that the staff from the La Coudray Band have already started geolocating wells within the reservation, and they also plan to do a 1-mile buffer around the reservation. And so that's a really great start. I think that's about 2,500 wells in the county. And then we would look to be expanding that for to finish the rest of the county. And we have applied to funding for that. If we do get the funding, then we would not have to ask Sawyer County for support for this step. But if we do get the funding, then this would be covered. Next slide. So the first map is a water table map. Many of you are probably familiar with topographic maps. This is read the exact same way, except that instead of the land surface, we're talking about the water table surface. So because we know groundwater likes to flow from high points in that water table to low points, we can then figure out what direction groundwater is flowing. If you hit the next slide, I've shown an example. You're just drawing a flow arrow from a point of high elevation to low elevation. And so once you know what direction groundwater is flowing, that can be useful for a lot of things. Some examples are it's helpful when trying to figure out where to put both private and public supply wells. It also can be helpful for siting landfills. And I've also seen it used for delineating wellhead protection areas around municipal wells. This is just to give you an idea of where we have a water table map across the state in purple, and then in yellow is in progress. And like I mentioned, we're already working with the La Coudray Band. As soon as they geolocate the wells, we'll be starting to map the water table on the reservation, and it'd be really easy and logical to continue that mapping through the rest of Sawyer County. Okay, the first map into that susceptibility map is depth to water. And this map, you can read it by the lighter the blue, the closer the water table is to the land surface. This is useful when you're drilling a well to figure out how deep I need to drill this well in a certain area of the county. It's also useful to determine relative risk of groundwater flooding throughout the county as well. Burnett County was particularly interested in using this as an educational tool because the water table is so shallow across much of the county. And of course, the other reason why it's important is because of susceptibility. If the water table is really close to the land surface, it's going to be easier for water and any contaminants to reach the water table. The next input is surficial geology. So this shows the surficial geology or the sediment type that's located beneath the soil. And it's interesting to map because it helps us understand why the landscape looks the way it does today because of the glaciers that were once in Sawyer County. But of course, it's also helpful for susceptibility. The sandier the material, the faster the water is going to move through it versus a clayey material. And so other ways this map can be handy is siting sand and gravel pits. It could also be helpful for landfill assessments and in forestry planning as well. And I just want to mention, like I said, we do already have plans in place to map the superficial geology of Sawyer County, which is really exciting. The next input is groundwater recharge. This is just the amount of precipitation making it to the water table in an average year. And so the darker the color, the higher the recharge rate. This type of map can be useful in areas of high development, like in land use planning. But I think in Sawyer County, this is probably more important when thinking about groundwater susceptibility. So the higher the recharge rate, the more susceptible groundwater will be, because if you think about it, that's where a lot of water is entering the groundwater system, and so contaminants can be carried along with that water. And the last input then is the depth to bedrock map. So here the warmer the color, the shallower the depth to bedrock. Again, this can be useful in areas of high development when building foundations and things like that, especially where the bedrock surface is close to the land surface. But I think in Sawyer County, again, it's important for groundwater susceptibility. So you can also think of depth to bedrock as like the thickness of the soils and sediments overlying bedrock. And if that if the soils and sediments are thin, then there's going to be less time for contaminants to break down before getting to the water table. And finally, the susceptibility map. Again, this is created using the 4 maps that we just saw, and it doesn't consider contaminant sources. So it's not going to tell you where groundwater will or won't become contaminated, but I think it's a really useful educational tool to help understand how the geology and the landscape can impact groundwater quality. And it can also be a really useful starting point when making land use decisions in the county, and also trying to figure out which areas you might want to do some additional groundwater monitoring. Just to give you an idea of what this all looks like at the end. So typically at the end of a project, we would share the GIS or digital data with you all. And then we would start a publication process with our team at the Geologic Survey, where we would work on a technical report to go alongside the maps so that it's a resource for the county. And if you're curious about what this looks like, we do have an example for Bayfield County on our website. And lastly, the timeline and budget for this project. So I'm providing here best estimates based off of a certain start and end date. So it is subject to change if the start date changes. I also want to be upfront that I'm providing a range of numbers here just because of uncertainty in some funding sources on our end. But for year 1, we would be asking for hydrogeologist salaries, some travel, and well geolocation is a question mark. And again, that's because it sort of depends on the source of funding for that superficial geology mapping. If we had to ask Sawyer County for help with that part, it would be the $59K versus the $42K. And what we'd get done in year 1 is geolocating the wells and doing a recharge and depth to bedrock map. And then in year 2, we'd ask for some of the hydrogeologist salary again, some travel money for a final presentation to the county, and some support for publication of that atlas. And then here in year 2, GIS support is a question mark. If we had to ask Sawyer County for help with that, it would be $59K versus the $48K. And what we would get done is the water table, the depth to water, and susceptibility mapping. So that brings the 2-year total to between around 101 and 106K. And of course, the cost of this type of project always varies from county to county. But to put it into perspective, I can give Burnett County as an example because we were already talking about Burnett County. But they paid around $250K for the products that I've showed you today. There were a few additional asks that I didn't show you guys, but essentially the same thing that we'd be proposing for Sawyer County. They paid $250K. So the reason for this is because they had to fund the superficial geology mapping, but we already have plans in place to do that at the Geologic Survey, which is really exciting, and it makes it a really timely and cost-effective opportunity for you all. And I think with that, I'll leave it for questions.
Well, very interesting presentation. I would assume this is going to be updated over time, then to reflect changes that may occur that affect what you showed here.
Yeah, so your question is like, once the study would be complete, then like, would it be updated in the future?
Right, yeah. Or do you see that or?
Yeah, actually, so Burnett County, they had a study by us in, I think it was the early 90s. And so for them, this was an update to that inventory from the 90s. And so there were some differences, and there were also some new maps that we made that they didn't have before. Of course, mapping techniques improve over time. Of course, so the maps, I would say it definitely improved. So of course, the geology doesn't change much, but yeah, but another factor is that, you know, the number of wells was way higher. So we know so much more about the subsurface because we have more data points, right?
Sure.
A good question.
Thank you. Anything else, committee?
Mike, would this be something we'd have to build in the budget or money aside for this?
I would anticipate using CIP money for this, which would be outside the levy limit.
Right, and that's ultimately why I had this presentation, kind of scheduled for today and working with budgets for 2026. I guess at this point I would add it per the CIP request, but then ultimately it would be up to county board to, approve that budget line item. So really it's your decision as county board elected officials on whether or not to, fund this project or not. I will include it and I'll have it in there. But when it gets down to the actual budgetary talks, that's your decision to then make.
So you're gonna try to build it into your budget?
Yeah, I'll put it into zoning and conservation CIP request. It'll be as that 2-year funded project. I'll probably use the higher number, but then again, it is up to the county board on whether to accept that or not. The way I could see this, potentially working if this study was done, it would be a mechanism for land use development, whether it's for livestock siting, landfill applications, town municipal wellhead protection ordinances. I know Matt McKay, as part of the Health and Human Service, was also interested in this as far as water testing for tourist rooming houses. I'm sure Brian is chomping at the bit that he would like to see some of this data as well, because Brian likes maps.
Well, to the extent that discussion and possible action is mentioned here.
Not for this one. So this is just as a presentation. Yeah, so this one is just for a presentation. And again, it was for Amy to come here, it was great. Thank you very much for doing so. And it was really to showcase that when you see the CIP item as part of the budget, now you have more information as to, okay, what is this groundwater monitoring that's being requested? So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
I've got some questions if I could ask.
Oh, sure.
All right. Just a couple general questions. What's the resolution of this data gonna be?
Yeah, good question. I believe most of, well, the mapping scale would be a county scale, so it'd be 1 to 100,000 is the map scale. I'm trying to think of like more specifics, like for example, I think the rasters, so like the susceptibility map, it would be like a 30 meter by 30 meter resolution, if that makes sense, or grid spacing, I mean.
Right on.
Yeah.
All right, so it's an high level overview, not a parcel to parcel comparison.
Correct. Yeah, it wouldn't be for site specific, but is more helpful at the county scale, big picture, long-term planning.
And you're using existing data sets or are you creating new data?
Yeah, so for most of these maps, we're using existing data, so there's not any additional data collected. It's possible with the surficial geology map that my colleague would be going out and collecting cores, rock core or sediment cores to help with his mapping. And so that would pretty much, I think, be the only new data that would be collected.
Okay, and then, this is all completed. We have the data. How do we utilize that data? Are we like pulling up a book? Or are we going to put this on our interactive mapping website? I mean, what's the final product come out as?
Yeah, so the final product is like GIS layers and rasters that you can all use if you use like GIS software in your analysis and planning. We also, like, you can also physically print out the map to scale if you want to have it up in your offices to refer to. But yeah, that's sort of what the end product looks like. Of course, we could also talk about ways that we could display it on your website that would be most useful to you as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks again.
Thank you.
Item F, underwater property, discussion and possible action.
This is that property that we discussed on, I believe it's Nelson Lake, a month ago. It went to the full board, was sent back to Land and Water. After looking into it more and asking another county administrator, I would kind of recommend doing nothing with this request of the county taking over the property.
Okay,
I'm gonna make the motion that we leave the property to the owner and do no action through the county.
we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item, let's see, 13, treasurer sale of in-rem parcels, discussion and possible action.
So I wanted to update the committee on where we stand. We started out with 37 properties. 6 of them got bids at or above the minimum bid requirements. So I'm asking the committee so that I could proceed forward and actually selling these lands to the bidders. And I have the printouts right now that I could hand out to you guys. Would you like to see those quick? Anybody?
As long as we're getting more than it.
Yeah, they're all since at the time frame of when these were acquired, the new act wasn't in place. There wasn't a whole lot of effort to track all the costs involved. But the minimum research that I have done recently shows that these bids will cover all our back taxes and fees or anything like that that's involved with them. Most of them are actually going to have proceeds that'll go back to the previous owner. So that's the first. Second, there's 31 parcels that are left. I would like to publish this in the paper where we're going to start the second round of bidding. I reduced the bid amounts on most of these and redid the verbiage that now on the second round, it's going to remain open until we are done and all of these properties are sold. So we're going to be a little bit more aggressive of contacting people around and getting them. I've already gotten quite a bit more interest since people have shown that they want to buy some of these parcels. So again, the next round of biddings, I got printouts of where the bids are going to be. This is showing what I'm going to post in the actual paper. And if you have any questions, I was looking for approval to proceed forward on it.
I'll make a motion to accept the bids for the 6 properties you have already received. I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And we had a second part to that?
Yeah, the second part is these 31 that are left.
31?
Yeah, that I'm going to republish it there in the second round of bidding. That's going to start next Monday, and it's going to go until they're all sold.
Committee?
Need a motion on that, Mike, or?
Yep.
I guess I'll make another motion to accept the new set rates for the other 31 properties till they're all sold.
And I'll second that.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 14, board appointed committee updates. Anything here? 15, correspondence reports from conferences and meetings. Anything there? Future agenda items. Adjournment. We are done. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Sixteen three, okay.
Imagine it's gonna go up a little bit.
My,
If those other